Picture this. It's a weekday and you've just finished your seventh Zoom meeting. Some of you might be thinking, this actually is my seventh Zoom meeting today. Either way, you're tired of being stuck inside and you can't wait to go for a walk or run outdoors. You decide to track your miles with Fitbit or MyFitnessPal. What you may not realize is by using these tools, you're engaging in a phenomenon called mHealth. mHealth stands for mobile health. In this growing industry of using mobile devices to track health is projected to have a market value of $90 billion by 2022. mHealth is also growing in the research industry, which is expressed by an increase of 135% in funding from the National Institutes of Health from 2014 to 2018. This semester, we have worked with Insight, an app-building platform created by researchers for researchers, enabling them to build their own mHealth apps for clinical studies. We have assessed the viability of Insight as a standalone business. Over the course of the semester, we have conducted over 30 interviews and used our collective research to answer this question. Today, we will show how Insight can become a separate for-profit entity called Insight LLC, which can reach a domestic market of over 12,000 clinical studies with a value of $3.3 billion. By going beyond its competitors with the addition of 3 new features and a business model they can implement to generate over $16 million in profit and $1.5 million in royalties for OU over the first 6 years as a company. Insight LLC has the potential to impact health outcomes by capturing clinical data in a beneficial manner for researchers and their study participants. My name is Kylie Trujillo, and I am a Doctor of Physical Therapy student.
My name is Ariana Bruner, and I'm a health administration student.
My name is Isbah Maududi, and I'm an MBA candidate.
And my name is Nicole Giordano, and I'm a PhD candidate in microbiology and immunology. Insight is an app-building platform that was made by researchers for researchers, with the goal of promoting technology-based health assessments and interventions. The Insight platform has 2 different app configurations, which a researcher can choose based on their study design. We will refer back to these throughout the presentation. The first one is EMA, which stands for Ecological Momentary Assessments. EMA studies can generate data through daily diaries or other self-reported measures that can be initiated by the participant or the researcher. JITI is the other configuration, which stands for Just-in-Time Adaptive Interventions. JITI studies aim to provide the right type and amount of support at the right time by adapting to the particular individual. JITI takes things a few steps further with the integration of features that can report data via other measures that are a little more objective, such as sensor integration and geopositioning. A hypothetical study that Insight could be used for is observing the lifestyle of a pre-diabetic, maybe determining what factors lead to the development of type 2 diabetes. In this study, a researcher may want daily diaries for the participants to log glucose levels and food intake, and maybe a sensor for physical activity. Insight would be licensed to the researcher, who can then tailor the content of their specific app to these outputs using a drag and drop interface, which is similar to building a Wix website. The researcher then distributes it to the participants via a code that the participant can use to access the app on their own phones or a phone that was distributed by the researcher. All participants need to do is follow instructions, and they can be compensated right through the app. The researcher can also track this subject data over time. Insight has brought in approximately $24 million in grant funding and has been used in over 40 studies in just 3 years of existence. It added 13 new studies in 2019 alone. 31 of these studies are currently ongoing or in development. The Insight platform is currently housed under the Oklahoma Tobacco Research Center, or OTRC, at OU. We were tasked with developing a commercialization strategy for the Insight platform. So, the question we are asking is, how can Insight go from the Insight platform, housed under OTRC, to a sustainable for-profit business? Our research and analyses demonstrate that Insight LLC can target a $3.3 billion market and generate $16.5 million in profit over 6 years if technological improvements are made. The answers to 3 questions inform this determination. First, how does Insight gain access to a larger market? The current market for Insight is fairly limited, with the majority of studies in the field of smoking cessation or taking place right here at UHSC. But the market opportunity is so much larger than that. It currently includes 12,700 studies, which come out to a $3.3 billion market value. The second question is, what technological improvements need to be made? In order to compete with and surpass its competitors, Insight needs to make technological improvements such as Apple iOS compatibility. It can also surpass these competitors by building new features such as delayed response and end-user preview. Additionally, improved ease of use for the researcher is a must, especially if Insight wants researchers to build the app themselves. Therefore, a how-to manual and a thorough website are imperative. Third, what is the ideal business model for Insight? First, the Insight platform must spin out of OU and develop the for-profit business Insight LLC. We came up with a business model that involves selling directly to the researcher. The researcher can either then build their own app or have Insight build the app for an additional fee. Insight would need to take actions on these fronts, which will be expanded upon by my teammates throughout this presentation, in order to launch Insight LLC and make $16.5 million in 6 years. Now I will hand it over to Kylie, who will talk more about the target market for Insight.
mHealth is found in the behavioral studies category, and behavioral studies make up 25% of the total clinical market. There are about 300,000 total studies with a market value of $46 billion. We discovered that roughly half of the global behavioral market is made of US studies, so for the early stages of the business, Insight LLC should focus here. In 5 years, they may be ready to expand to the global market. The breakdown of the US behavioral market is expressed in the pie chart, which consists of studies that are non-applicable for mHealth, those already using mHealth, and studies which can potentially use Insight LLC. The total number of studies is about 23,000 with a market value of $6 billion. A portion of the studies in the US are not applicable for mHealth because they have no use for it or they are using another type of digital health system. Also, current researchers using mHealth are eliminated as potential customers because they are loyal to their platform. So, of the US studies, 12,700 are viable for Insight LLC with a market value of $3.3 billion. The Insight platform was originally designed for tobacco cessation researchers, which ranks in the top 10 of mHealth research fields. However, there are a multitude of other opportunities in the behavioral research field, such as in the top 3 research fields for mHealth studies, which are mental health, physical activity, and HIV. For example, a physical therapy researcher could conduct a study using Giordano to track the effectiveness of an exercise program for individuals with low back pain. To reach the desired market penetration, Insight LLC must ensure ease of use and data tracking based on interviews. Half of interviewees stated they need to have user-friendliness for the researcher and their study participants, and 75% stated the need for data tracking capabilities. Now that we have discussed how Insight LLC can target the vast market of behavioral researchers, we will talk about how they can stand out among competitors.
Thank you, Kylie. Insight LLC has the opportunity to be a market leader with its current and user-desired features, as well as with its competitive pricing structure. On this matrix, you'll see 3 different categories: current features, user-desired features, and prices. During our research, we were able to identify 3 other mHealth platforms that were similar in concept to Insight. Those were Pillar, Life Data, and Illumavu. When focusing on the most unique features, our research determined that offline capabilities, iOS compatibility, sensor monitoring, and adaptive interventions were important for most researchers. As you can see, Insight LLC has all of the current features, including micro-randomization, which none of the competitors have. When determining user-desired features, we turned to our 30+ interviewers, where researchers were asked what features they would like to have while using mHealth for their studies. We were able to compile a list of the top 3 most desirable features, which were iOS compatibility, delayed response, which in this context, that means something like a snooze button, and end-user preview. As of right now, Insight as a platform does not have any of those features. However, the future of Insight LLC will lead to the creation of these features that will allow them to be the prime leader in the mHealth market. Lastly, Insight LLC's ability to provide the most comprehensive list of features for competitive price sets Insight apart from the competition. As you can see, for a one-year study, Insight LLC is comparable to its competition, yet will provide an additional 3 features that were not present in its competitors. With this information, Insight LLC will be able to lead the market when compared to the rest of the competition. Now I will pass it on to Isbah, who will discuss the business model for Insight LLC.
Thank you, Ariana. We determined that selling the Insight platform directly to the researchers is the ideal business model for Insight. This process will begin when OU licenses the technology to Insight, who in return will pay royalties. We recommend that Insight changes the prices to a flat annual rate of $28,000 for JDI, the more comprehensive configuration of Insight, and $5,000 for EMA, the basic configuration of Insight. Insight's current prices are $20,000 for the first year of JDI and $5,000 for each subsequent year, and $7,500 for the first year of EMA and $2,500 each subsequent year. This price change will increase profits for Insight while also retaining competitive pricing. Then the researchers will apply for grants from grant agencies such as the NIH and spend a portion of that to license Insight. The researchers will then build an app that fits their research purpose and distribute it to participants to collect data. Alternatively, the researchers could pay Insight to build the app for an additional $4,000 fee. Since Insight's ideal business model will be to sell directly to researchers, let's take a deeper look at the interaction between Insight and the researcher. The researcher will have 3 different points of contact within Insight. First, Insight's marketing representative will reach the researcher and create interest. This can be accomplished by advertising through conferences, such as the annual Duke Nicotine Research Conference, professional societies, or other means. And Insight will also build a website where interested researchers can access additional information. Then the researcher will contact Insight's program manager to reach agreement on the length of access to the platform, as well as the configuration that will be used. If needed, the researcher can then contact the research tech to help building the app. In order to reduce the number of researchers that require Insight to build the app, Insight must improve the user friendliness of the platform. Now that we've discussed how Insight will operate, let's take a look at the financial implications on Insight. Forecasting Insight's expenses for the first 6 years, Insight will generate roughly $16.5 million for itself and roughly $1.5 million in royalties for OU. As you can see, Insight will operate at over a $525,000 loss in year 1. However, Insight will begin to generate positive profit in year 2, assuming a growth of 1% of the market share each year for a total of 635 studies using Insight in year 6. Based on Insight's current customer base, we estimate that approximately 59% of researchers will use JDI, with the rest of them using EMA. And Insight will build the app for roughly 45% of those studies. All in all, this model reveals that Insight's customer base will grow to over 600 studies, the employee base will grow to 51, Insight will generate approximately $16.5 million, and now let's discuss the next steps Insight can take to get to this point.
Insight can take immediate steps towards launching Insight LLC. Word of mouth has been very successful so far for Insight, but they need to gain access to this larger market. A comprehensive website would be useful in attracting new clients and keeping current and former clients informed. They can also design promotional materials to put on this website and to promote and distribute at conferences, meetings, and workshops. A sales representative and previous clients could also aid in expanding the client network and the market in subsequent years. To compete with other platforms, Insight LLC will need to develop new features such as Apple compatibility and continue innovating after launch in order to stay ahead of their competitors. A how-to guide is also very important for the ease of use for the researchers, which they can start completing now. In terms of becoming a business, Insight the platform first needs to negotiate to spin out of OU. It also needs to obtain additional funding, as they are going to be operating on an over $500,000 deficit in year 1. After launch, they will need to continue hiring since the number of technicians needed is directly related to the number of studies based on our business model. These immediate steps can help Insight LLC penetrate a $3.3 billion market and generate $16.5 million in profits over 6 years, and $1.5 million in royalties for OU over the same 6 years. Thank you everyone from all over the world for being here today. And especially a big thank you to Dr. Busnell and Andrew Pollack for being great to work with and helping us along the way and answering any questions that we might have. We'd also like to thank the I-CCEW staff. Your guidance and feedback has been super valuable. And of course, our fearless leader, Souweli, for being the best team leader we could ever ask for. We'll now open the call to any questions.